The Viridian Empire thought neural warfare meant hacking computers and disrupting communications. Then they invaded Earth and met ravens who had spent 10,000 years learning to think like humans, and discovered that minds weren't always inside bodies you could target. Every species in the galaxy understands information warfare. You intercept enemy communications, jam their signals, hack their networks, and disrupt their command and control systems. It's standard military doctrine because modern warfare depends on information flow. The Viridians had perfected this approach over 7,000 years, developing technology that could infiltrate any network, disable any communication system, and isolate enemy forces from their command structure. They had conquered 32 worlds using these tactics, each invasion succeeding because the defenders couldn't coordinate without their technology. Then they came to Earth expecting the same easy victory, and humanity introduced them to a type of information network they had never imagined, a biological intelligence network carried by birds that could think, remember, and coordinate. Without a single piece of technology, the ravens remembered humanity, and when the invasion came, they remembered why they had chosen to work with us 10,000 years ago. This is the story of Operation Raven's Eye, humanity's most unusual intelligence network that operated without computers, radios, or anything the Viridians could detect. How birds, with brains the size of walnuts, outsmarted an empire that had mastered digital warfare, and why the Viridians now classify corvids as strategic-level threats equal to artificial intelligence or quantum computing systems. Ravens and humans have a relationship that goes back to the last ice age, maybe earlier. Our ancestors noticed that ravens would lead them to dead animals. Then they would wait for the humans to open the carcasses with tools so the ravens could feed on what remained. The ravens learned that humans were useful. Humans learned that ravens were intelligent over thousands of years. That relationship evolved into something remarkable. Ravens learned to recognize individual humans, remember faces for years, communicate complex information, and even teach their offspring which humans were trustworthy. Humans learned to interpret raven calls, follow their guidance, and appreciate their intelligence. By the 21st century, some humans were actively training ravens. Police used them for surveillance, because ravens could go places drones couldn't, without attracting attention. Search and rescue teams used them to cover vast areas. Researchers studied their problem-solving abilities and discovered that ravens could plan for the future, use tools, and communicate abstract concepts. When humanity expanded to the stars, we brought ravens with us. Not in the same way we brought dogs or horses, but as companions and partners. Every colony ship had a small population of ravens. By the time the invasion occurred in 2287, there were millions of ravens living alongside humans. The Viridian invasion fleet arrived without warning. They deployed their digital warfare systems immediately, infiltrating Earth's communication networks and military computers. With Tinoers, they had achieved what they believed was complete information dominance. Human forces couldn't communicate through conventional means, but the Viridians made a critical miscalculation. They assumed that because they had disabled humanity's technology, they had isolated human forces. They didn't realize that humans had a backup communication network that predated technology, one that had been operating for 10,000 years. The first person to recognize the potential was Dr. Emily Corvus. She had been working with a conspiracy of ravens on cognitive research when the invasion began. When conventional communications failed and Viridian forces began advancing on a research facility, she had a desperate idea. When the sky turned black with Viridian ships, our high-tech defenses fell in hours. Our silicon world was silenced by superior alien code. In the shadows of a hidden bunker, Dr. Corvus realized that to beat a machine, we needed something the machines couldn't understand. She chose memory, her most intelligent raven. To his leg, she attached a low-tech cylinder, containing our only hope for coordination. With a beat of wings, the first node of our new network took flight, soaring into a world ruled by electronic eyes. Below him, the city was a maze of Viridian searchlights. They scanned 4 radio waves, but ignored the beating of a biological heart. Deep within the ruins, Colonel Morrison waited in silence. His radios were dead, his army scattered and blind in the dark. Then, a tapping on the glass. A messenger from a time before satellites, carrying a message that would change the war. Morrison read the words, "Conventional comes down. Ravens can establish a network." For the first time, the resistance had a voice. He penned a reply, securing it to Memory's leg. The return journey was dangerous, but the avian network was just beginning to grow. Across the country, other researchers were reached. Using old landlines and ancient tradecraft, they prepared their own biological messengers. From mountains to coastal ruins, hundreds of ravens took to the sky. A web of intelligence was weaving itself over the invaders. The Viridians scanned the electromagnetic spectrum. They saw nothing but static and silence, unaware of the complex data moving above them. On our screens, red zones of total electronic interference were being bypassed by a shimmering grid of green biological movement. But the ravens were more than just couriers. A raven named Problem proved they were active participants in our survival. He didn't just deliver the message. He saw an ambush being set and used his ancient instincts to warn the human unit. Understanding the warning, the soldiers turned the tables. The invaders, reliant on sensors that detected only metal, never saw the organic trap. Victory followed. The high-tech invaders were blinded by their own sophistication, while we returned to our oldest alliances. Dr. Corvus and Colonel Morrison met on the field of the first victory. Above them, the network was stronger than ever. The future of warfare isn't just in the chips we build, but in the life we share. The biological age of intelligence has begun. In the darkest hours of the Viridian invasion, humanity's survival didn't come from advanced steel, but from the ancient shadows of our skies. Our electronic networks were silenced instantly, leaving the human resistance blind and deaf to the movements of an extraterrestrial conqueror. Dr. Corvus, a brilliant scientist hiding in the ruins, was the first to realize that we weren't as alone as we thought. While the Viridians monitored every radio frequency, they ignored the cacophony of nature. They didn't realize the ravens were watching back. The birds weren't just fleeing. They were communicating. Their frantic calls were a biological early warning system, echoing through the desolate valleys. Corvus began to experiment, mapping their vocalizations to Viridian troop movements. She discovered an emergent intelligence waiting to be harnessed. She identified 3 exceptional ravens who would become the pillars of our new intelligence network: Echo, Whisper, and Memory. Echo was the master of numbers. He could count Viridian infantry with uncanny precision, signaling their strength through rhythmic, repetitive calls. Whisper had a keen eye for technology. She could distinguish between heavy tanks and light scouts, hovering silently above convoys to mark their path. And then there was Memory. She found our scattered resistance units in the wild, leading them to safety through hidden gestures and specific flights. In the high-tech command centers of the Viridian fleet, frustration began to boil. Their sophisticated sensors showed a world they couldn't control. Commander Zelthar stared at the data. Despite their electronic dominance, every human ambush was perfectly timed. Every movement anticipated by the rebels. It was during a review of combat footage that Zelthar saw it. A single black bird flying between fire teams. He froze the frame, suspicious. The order was given: eliminate the avian threat. Viridian soldiers began firing into the sky, targeting the very birds that had become our eyes. As the first ravens fell, the human communication network began to falter. The resistance was pushed back into the shadows of their bunkers. But intelligence is not limited to a few. Colonel Morrison and Dr. Corvus realized they needed to expand the network to all corvid species. The rebellion went global. In the cities, the clever crows took over the watch. In the rural outskirts, magpies monitored the supply lines. Blue jays in the forests became the scouts for our hidden mountain bases. A vast, organic web of information that no jammer could touch. The birds began to fight back. A massive murder of crows mobbed Viridian patrols, creating chaos and blinding their sensors with sheer numbers. This distraction was all Morrison needed. Human forces moved safely in the background, positioning themselves for the final decisive blow. The Viridian occupation of the capital was vast, but it was hollow. They controlled the buildings, but we controlled the environment around them. The guerrilla victory was swift and brutal. Ambushed from every side, the Viridian infantry found themselves trapped in a city that knew their every move. The invasion ended not with a bang of a superweapon, but with a quiet realization that Earth's oldest residents were its most fierce defenders. As the sun sets on the first day of peace, a raven and a crow sit together, watching the horizon. A new partnership has begun. The breakthrough for Earth came when Dr. Corvus discovered that ravens could be trained to recognize Viridian communication nodes. These were physical installations the Viridians used as relay points for their digital warfare systems. The ravens learned to identify the characteristic shapes and electromagnetic signatures of these nodes and report their locations. They used their usual methods of showing direction and presence. Human forces used this Corvid-gathered intelligence to conduct targeted raids. The irony was perfect. The Viridians' own network, used to disrupt human technology, was being mapped by birds that required no technology to operate. The most famous operation involved a raven named Saga, named for her ability to remember and navigate complex routes. Saga was trained to follow Viridian patrols and mark their routes by dropping small pieces of colored cloth at intervals. Human forces would follow these marked routes in reverse, finding Viridian supply caches and communication nodes. Saga performed this for over 4 months, contributing to the destruction of 17 installations before she was killed by automated defenses. When Saga died, every Corvid in the region responded. Hundreds of ravens, crows, and magpies conducted a coordinated strike against the facility. They descended in massive numbers, overwhelming visual sensors with sheer quantity, and dropping debris on equipment. Human special forces used the chaos to infiltrate and destroy the facility. The Corvets lost over 60 members, but they succeeded. Dr. Corvus struggled with the ethical implications. She had turned partners into soldiers, exposing intelligent creatures to dangers. But the alternative was human extinction, and the Corvids seemed to understand they were fighting for their own survival. In her later writings, she reflected, "I didn't create warriors out of peaceful birds. Corvids have always been survivors, adapting to threats. The Corvids chose to fight. That choice haunts me, but I also respect it. They're intelligent beings making decisions about their survival." The Viridian High Command finally acknowledged 8 months in that they were facing an intelligence network they couldn't counter. One report stated, "The humans have weaponized an information network that predates their civilization. We can disrupt technology, but not biology." The Viridian Empire chose withdrawal. The inability to control information flow meant they couldn't establish stable occupation. Earth celebrated, but the celebration was complicated. The Corvid network had saved humanity, but it had cost 15,000 Corvid lives. Monuments were erected in major cities showing ravens carrying messages, protecting human soldiers, and gathering intelligence. The inscriptions honored their sacrifice. Some argued animals couldn't be soldiers. Others argued the Corvids understood exactly what they were fighting for. The scientific community studied the Corvids' wartime behavior extensively. The coordination they displayed went beyond anything previously documented in wild Corvids. They had formed what researchers called a meta-conspiracy, a superflock that crossed species boundaries and coordinated actions across hundreds of kilometers. The cognitive requirements for this level of organization suggested intelligence that was previously unrecognized or underestimated. One study concluded, Corvids are capable of abstract thinking, long-term planning, and teaching complex behaviors to their offspring and unrelated individuals. During the Viridian invasion, they demonstrated these abilities at scale, creating an information network that operated similarly to human military communication systems. This suggests that intelligence networks are not inherently technological, and that biological cognitive systems can match or exceed artificial systems in specific applications. The military implications were studied just as intensely. Every military on Earth wanted to understand how to replicate and improve the Corvid network. Training programs were established to teach soldiers how to work with Corvid. Breeding programs aimed to increase Corvid populations. Researchers worked on developing better communication methods between humans and Corvids, creating simplified languages based on mutual understanding. But the most profound change was philosophical. The invasion demonstrated they were intelligent in ways that had strategic military value. They weren't tools or weapons. They were allies who had chosen to fight for shared survival. The Viridians published their complete intelligence analysis of the Corvid network as a warning to other species. The document, translated into galactic common language, became required reading for military strategists across known space. Its conclusion was blunt. Earth humans have formed cognitive partnerships with multiple species, most notably canids and corvids. These partnerships create biological intelligence networks that cannot be disrupted through conventional electronic warfare. Other species read the Viridian warning and began reassessing Earth's defensive capabilities. The Corvid network demonstrated that Earth was actually a multi-species civilization where boundaries between species were less rigid than elsewhere. 20 years after the invasion, the Corvid population on Earth has returned to pre-war numbers. These younger Corvids have no memory of the war, but they carry the learned behaviors and relationship patterns their parents told them. Dr. Corvis, now retired from active research, maintains relationships with the descendants of the Corvids she worked with during the war. She visits the descendants of Memory, Problem, and Saga. She brings them food and communicates in the simplified language they developed together. She gives an annual lecture at military academies about the Corvid network, emphasizing both its effectiveness and its costs. We won because the Corvids chose to help us, she tells each new class of officers, not because we commanded them or forced them. Partnership requires trust, and trust is earned through consistent behavior over time. That's a strategic asset you can't build overnight. The military continues to maintain Corvid communication networks as backup systems in case conventional technology is compromised. Every major base has a conspiracy of trained ravens and a murder of trained crows. Soldiers learn basic Corvid communication as part of their training. The doctrine for operating during electronic warfare blackout conditions explicitly includes procedures for using biological intelligence networks. But the Corvids aren't just military assets. They're citizens of Earth, protected by laws that recognize their intelligence and their contributions. Killing a Corvid carries penalties similar to killing an intelligent alien species. Researchers study their cognition with the utmost respect. Efforts continue to improve communication, with linguists arguing that true interspecies language might be possible given their demonstrated cognitive abilities. The Galactic Council held sessions discussing what the Corvid network meant for definitions of sapience and civilization. If Corvids could coordinate military operations and teach complex behaviors, were they sapient? Should Earth be considered a tooth species civilization? The debates were complicated by the fact that Corvids couldn't build technology. The Council determined Earth represents a multi-species civilization where different species contribute different capabilities to collective survival. The Corvids of Earth demonstrate intelligence that qualifies as strategic-level thinking. They are recognized as intelligent beings worthy of diplomatic consideration. Any species considering military action now had to account for fighting millions of intelligent Corvids who could gather intelligence unhindered. The Corvids had become a strategic deterrent, proof that Earth had allies that couldn't be bombed or hacked or isolated. 30 years after the invasion, children grow up knowing the stories of the war ravens. Schools teach about Memory, Problem, and Saga, who carried messages when technology failed. These stories have become part of Earth's cultural identity. A ceremony is held every year called the Day of Wings. Humans gather in public spaces to honor the Corvids. They bring food for living Corvids and reaffirm the partnership. Corvids seem to understand the ceremony's significance. At one such ceremony, an elderly soldier named Marcus Webb gave a speech that became famous. He spoke. They didn't have to help us. They could have lived their lives without caring about human survival. But they stayed. They fought. They died. On this day, we remember what we owe them. Not as tools, but as friends. The Corvids present responded with a chorus of calls. The emotional context was clear. Acknowledgement, solidarity, and continued partnership. Dr. Corvus offered a different perspective. I mourn them individually and collectively, but I don't regret the partnership. The Corvids made their choice. They understood that this fight mattered. We didn't use them as tools. We fought alongside them as allies. The descendants of the war Corvids continued to work with humans. Some helped with search and rescue, using their aerial mobility, and some are simply companions, living alongside humans in relationships that have existed for 10,000 years. Memory's lineage is particularly remarkable. His great-grandchildren show enhanced cognitive abilities that these ravens learn faster, communicate more clearly, and show greater understanding of human needs than most Corvids. Whether this represents actual evolution or just accumulated learned behaviors passed through generations is debated, but the result is the same: increasingly capable partners. The technology for communicating with Corvids has improved significantly. Researchers developed symbol systems that both humans and Corvids can understand. The Corvids can indicate concepts like numbers, directions, presence of specific threats, and even emotional states through combinations of symbols and behaviors. One breakthrough came when researchers realized that corvids process time differently than humans. They can remember specific events years later with remarkable clarity. A corvid could remember that a specific location was dangerous years after a single bad experience, and communicate that to humans who had no direct knowledge. The military applications of this temporal memory are studied extensively. Corvids provide historical context for areas that human forces operate in. They remember where resources were found, where threats appeared, and where safe routes existed. This knowledge is an intelligence asset that exists nowhere else. 40 years after the invasion, the generation of corvids born during the war is mostly gone. Their offspring carry the partnership forward. Dr. Corvus, in her final recorded interview, reflected on a lifetime of work. I've watched them solve problems, teach their children, and celebrate their successes. If there's one thing I want people to understand, it's that the corvids who fought in the war weren't following programming. They were thinking beings. That choice, that partnership, is humanity's greatest strength. We're not alone. We never have been. The last corvid who remembered the war directly, a raven named Echo's Echo, died 5 years ago at the age of 43. She had carried messages during the final months of the invasion and witnessed battles that human soldiers still have nightmares about. So, if you want to understand why Earth cannot be ISLA conquered, don't just look at our technology. Look at the ravens flying overhead. The Viridians discovered that biological intelligence networks can't be hacked or jammed. They fled from a planet where birds remember human faces. The ravens remembered humanity. They declared war on invaders who threatened their partners. And they won. End recording. The ravens remember, and they will always remember.